If you can't get the people around you to believe in what you're doing and want to be part of it, it's not going to happen.
Today's guest built one of Australia's largest financial services empires.
Somewhere into the future, you'll hear about us using wound care that makes your wounds heal very, very quickly.
If you've got kids and they ask you a question, viewers, what skill should I learn in the future to be successful in business? I'd probably answer saying learn how to sell.
You've got to have a ticket in the lottery to win.
What?
I need to talk to you and tell you how I became successful in my career.
But you left as a director. Did you feel lost?
Probably 12 months later, I'm thinking, why?
There is a very, very small handful of people in this country that have turned private companies to public companies.
I bought them for $300 each when I was 16 years of age, and
Hi, I'm Andrew Wright, Principal of Professional Southport, and this is the Andrew Wright Property Podcast. I've built a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, delivering a seven-figure annual rental income, and led my real estate team through thousands of sale and lease transactions. In each episode, I share real deals and strategies that will help you find, fund, and operate profitable property deals. The aim of this show is to provide education and build a community of like-minded investors who can collaborate, share insights, and help each other in each other's journeys. You can make excuses or you can make money, but you can't do both. So come and join us. Okay, welcome back to the Andrew Wright Property Podcast. Today's guest built one of Australia's largest financial services empires, expanding it across multiple countries, and then walked away, only to do it all again in completely different industries. Robbie Bennetts is the founder of Professional Investment Holdings, which in just 9 years grew to over 1,000 locations, becoming the largest financial planning group in Australia. He's been recognised alongside treasurers, regulators, and major bank CEOs as one of the most influential figures in Australia in the financial services industry, and has since gone on to build, invest in, and exit businesses across technology, manufacturing, online betting, mining services, and now advanced environmental and health technologies. Robbie has been a company director on 36 boards in 9 countries and had the privilege and honour of carrying the Olympic torch for the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. This is not just a story about success. It's a story about reinvention, timing, and backing yourself again and again. Robbie lives in Sorrento with his lovely wife, Cherie, and 2 daughters and 5 grandchildren in the family. I've known Robbie for nearly 30 years, and what I like most about Robbie is he loves having a hit of golf. Robbie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew, and nice to be sitting here with you.
Before we get into the serious business, can you tell us about carrying the Olympic torch for the Sydney Olympic Games? How did that come about, and what sort of emotion did you feel having that honour?
Yeah, well, certainly an honour, and having always enjoyed my sport and watching people doing it, and having sponsored a number of people that went on and won both Commonwealth Games and Olympic gold medals. It was such a treat. Mind you, I was nominated for it by AMP because they were a sponsor and they were allowed to nominate people. But once you were nominated, you had to go through all the process about what had you done in your sporting career. And for my sins, I played 384 games of Aussie rules and became a life member of the club and was in their team of champions. So that helped. Plus, what have you done for charity? So I was fortunate enough that I was involved with at least 25 charity events a year, and that counted towards it. So fortunately, I was able to get through the requirements to become a torch bearer. So
Wow.
that was something very special.
And was it just like 100 metres you run with a torch? Or
No, you run for about 800 metres.
Yeah, right.
And I was fortunate enough to bring the torch down from the last bit of the hill at Byron Bay. And I took it from Larry Anthony, a politician at the time, and I was the first person to run it onto the flat area where the big crowds were waiting to see the torch. A very, very special treat.
Wow. You mentioned you sponsored a couple of athletes. Is there a name there that people might recognise?
Yeah, well, Duncan Free went on and he won...
The rower?
Rower,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
won medals at a couple of Olympics and he won the gold in Beijing. Brad Carlefelt, a triathlete. Brad won gold at the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. So very proud and very honoured to have been able to sponsor these guys.
Wow, absolutely awesome. And before I met you, Robbie, like, what was your first business or career? What did you do in the early days before financial services?
Well, Andrew, interesting question because, my parents got me to leave school because they were in the meat industry and that carried on through years of being involved with butcher shops and I actually owned part of an abattoirs at one stage. But I think the first real adventure of my own was owning a couple of butcher shops, part of a bus company that was, small company taking some tourists around here. So that was where we started to branch out and own things of our own. And I did retire. I think I was about 26 when I first decided I should retire. And then a friend of mine came and sat down with me, a guy called Gordon Allen, and said, "You're crazy, you don't have enough money." And he spent 2 days convincing me that I did not have enough money to retire and talked me into getting into financial services. I did say to him, "Gordon, I don't have expertise in this area." He said, "You're a business guy." And he said, "You're smart, you can study, and you'll work out what it's going to be." Very hard thing to go back and study all over again, by the way. But I did that, and I went and got a degree and moved into financial services.
Okay, so this is before 1996, before you set up PIS, is that right?
That's correct. I started with a company called Monitor Money originally.
And take us back to 1996. You were a founder, or the main founder, I hope I'm able to say the main founder of Professional Investment Services. How did that happen, Robbie?
Well, it was an interesting scenario, Andrew. We were involved, and I had the state rights to another financial services group, and they were purchased by a bank, an overseas bank. And the attitude changed. Instead of being out there, because we built a business working with accounting firms, suddenly it was, well, you better go and tell these accountants that they're lucky that they can sell our product. And my answer was, well, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. They're out to provide the best advice for their clients, not to sell the product. And they said, well, we own the thing now, you better rethink where you're going, because we need to go and tell them they have to sell product. I said, if you tell them they have to sell product, you'll be thrown out the door and they will not deal with you. They said, well, we think you've got a better future elsewhere. So that's how PIS came to be. We decided we better set up our own. And that was along with some accountants, particularly Ken Thompson and Pat Crowley and Ross Calvert, John Cheel, and a financial advisor called Dipel and Webb, and another one, Rick Carl, and that's how PIS was started.
Wow.
Oh, and Shane O'Reilly, Stephen Murphy. Just keep thinking of the names that all want to be involved at the beginning.
Oh well, you just bring back memories now, because I know a lot of those people, and an awesome story. And tell me about the philosophy in that particular business model, and perhaps you've done it in other business models as well, where instead of owning 100% of a business yourself, you've got other people with smaller shareholdings in the business, so that you unite a group of people together to work towards a common goal. Tell us about that, Robbie. This is I'll just tell you, I've known this guy 30 years, and one of his greatest strengths is pooling people together and working towards a common vision in business. He's incredibly good at it. Tell us about that philosophy, Robbie.
Well, Andrew, I think perhaps the word culture is very important in my life. It's always been, my culture has always been to encourage the people around me and to make people successful. And it is in the hundreds of people that I've made into millionaires back in when a million seemed a real lot of money. So I think it's always been about getting the people involved. I sat with Greg Norman many, many years ago, and we were talking about business, and I said something about the financial services And we were talking about estate rights at the time. He said, "Do you own the whole thing?" I said, "Well, just that part of it." He said, "I don't think you should own businesses 100%. He said, "I think you're better off owning 20%. And his thinking behind that was the people that own the other 80%, they're working really hard. So you don't require as much effort to get them to work hard because they've got a very big interest in the business. So consequently, I own 20 to 30% of quite a number of businesses."
This is Greg Norman, the world #1 golfer at the time, and very good entrepreneur.
Yes.
So better off owning a small percentage of something that's massive than owning it all yourself.
Yeah, and of course the financial services turned out to be that way because effectively I had 20% of it. The other owners at the beginning wanted me to go to 40%. I said, no, let's share it amongst everybody so everybody can enjoy the benefits of our success. We've got to be successful, but I want everybody to enjoy it, and that we did.
Okay. And along the way, initially when you started scaling that business, it was all organic. We had, I was part of the group. We had about 1,000 locations there. And tell us about how your belief system changed over time about organic growth versus when you eventually started to acquire life insurance businesses. I think there might have even been some home loan books and international financial planning firms. Tell us about that philosophy of organic growth versus getting into acquisition mode.
Well, Andrew, we were very comfortable and very happy with the way we'd grown organically, particularly on the investment side of things, which is where our background really came from, accounting and investing. And so that worked very well for us and everyone was very happy going along. Mind you, we were the ones that really introduced financial services to the accounting firms. There was another guy called Barry Lambert. He had a company called Count, and his role was, or his company went out to try and get the accountants to become the financial advisors. And it didn't work as well as our model where we introduced a qualified financial advisor to go and work with the clients of the accounting firm. So our model perhaps worked better at that particular time. Now, with having said that, it opened the door to allow more and more people to become involved and more people to grow an asset inside that accounting firm. So you got the benefit flowing across, and you call it shared rather than owning the entire business. But it meant the business was able to grow organically very, very quickly because everyone knew that they were building something for themselves. Then what happened is we heard about, it was a company called Norwich at the time, and they had a situation with their insurance brokerage firm that they were losing considerable money every year on that firm. And they said, "You don't want to take it over, Robbie." I said, "Well, what do you want for it?" And they gave me a reasonable amount, and at the time we'd made enough that we were able to afford it. And there was about 600 insurance agents in that. We had a look through and thought there's probably 400 that we'd want to keep. And so we went ahead with that transaction. That was our first taste of going into purchasing something.
Okay, and that entity, was it IFMA from
yes,
memory?
It was. Yeah. And from memory, and please don't hold me to this, from memory, it was losing about $500,000 a year, and in its first year, we made $1 million.
Yeah, right.
So we turned it around from a loss of $500,000 a year to a profit of $1 million a year. So mind you, there was a lot of, some may call it waste in there. Others would look at the management that was running it, so we sort of tidied all that up and enjoyed the rewards.
Yeah. I mentioned before that one of your greatest skill sets, apart from being an awesome salesman, Robbie, is getting people together, building a culture, and getting a large group of people working towards a common goal. Now, this is just a little bit of fun now, but let me tell you, the amount of events, functions, and conferences Robbie went through for about a decade would make you tired just looking at his calendar. He'd work all day. At night time, he'd be running events and inviting new potential participants to the group to functions, and he'd be up there as the lead singer in a band called the PIS Band, and did a very good impersonation of Elvis Presley, let me tell you. And you were like a kid at a candy store there. You love singing and just having social events with all these professional introvert accountants who would start the night like this, and by the end of the night they're up dancing or singing with a microphone in their hand.
You know, the world's a funny thing, and sometimes it's finding that little bit of something that makes a difference to you. And, you know, I was trying to do business with the Japanese back in the 80s, and I went to Tokyo, had dinner with them, and they said, we're going out now. So we walked into this tiny little bar, and one of the directors of this company got up and sings a song, and this is what they described to me as a karaoke bar. And then they said, now it's your turn. I said, oh, no, I don't sing or anything. Well, of course, if you're going to do business with the Japanese, you will sing. So that's how we had our very first song, and it was an Elvis song they put up. And just without boring you, just some of the quick stories that go with that. We used that, yes, when we were recruiting accountants and advisors to help break down some of the barriers. At night time, they could have a dinner. We'd force them to get up and sing, and by the end of the night, it was trying to get the microphone off them. We bought a business in Malaysia, and it was funny because the night that we'd settled and we went out with the management of the company that we'd bought, we've had dinner, then we've all got into 2 maxi taxis, went round to a karaoke bar, and they got up there, and the CEO of that business turned around and got up and sung a song, and just immediately swung round, put the microphone into my hand and said, your turn now, Mr. Bennett, you have to sing a song. And he picked an Elvis Presley song. The management there told us later on that because I was able to sing better than him, that there was no doubt about who the boss was going forward. And it just settled the whole management straight away. Just recently I spoke at a businessman's breakfast up in Rockhampton. And I told the story of what happened here. When they were trying to attract some Chinese business people for a very major property development called The Jewel, I got a call from Stephen Chobo, who was the minister for the government, federal minister and member for here at the time. And they said, can you come and do us a favour? I said, what's that? So we want you to come and sing to a Chinese guy. I said, you what? And they said, yes, look, we've got Tom Tate, we've got a couple of other Gold Coast business people, we've got Campbell Newman. This was when Campbell Newman was just running to become Premier, I think. And Stephen Chobo, I said, no, you can't be serious. He said, I know you can sing Chinese. Some of your people told me that you sung a song in Chinese up in Asia. And I said, yeah, but it was really hard. He said, doesn't matter. He said, we're having lunch, private lunch, there's 8 of us, and we just need you to sing Chinese to this guy to try and get this deal across the line. Oh, rightio. So here I was with the what became the Premier or the Mayor and the Minister, and I'm sitting there looking this Chinese gentleman straight across the table into the eyes, and of course the song I sung turned out to be a Chinese love song. But the Jewel got built ultimately, didn't it?
Yeah, fantastic.
So, the things that we do sometimes. But I told that story in his presentation at Rockhampton the other day, and the member for Rockhampton, the state member, came and spoke to me after the presentation, and she said, I need to talk to you and tell you how I became successful in my career. She said, because I could sing, I used to sing in a band as a young person. She said, I had a company that was dealing with the Japanese, could never, ever break the barriers down. So they hired me, so I was working for the company, but the deal was when the Japanese were around, I had to sing. So she said, I learned to sing in Japanese, and all the barriers came down, and we had a very successful relationship with them.
Wow, that's awesome. And
she's a current member.
Yeah. Well, look. You just bring back so many memories of being on the Terps. I actually got pulled over one night going home after one of those things, and I was right on the limit from having a good night listening to you sing your Elvis Presley song. So, just going back to the from organic growth to acquisition mode, I just want to point out to the viewers. I mentioned on the last podcast with Peter Pullich, there is a very, very small handful of people in this country that have turned private companies to public companies or sold out to public companies. Robbie's done it twice. And one of the I haven't, Robbie might not be expecting this questions, but I see there's some sort of arbitrage there where you've gone out and you've bought insurance businesses, you've bought businesses overseas, maybe at multiples of 2 or 3 times earnings. And when they go to a stock market valuation, all of a sudden the PE ratios are 15 to 20 times instead of 2 to 4. What do you think about what I just said there, Robbie?
Well, it's absolutely true, Andrew. The thing is, you've got to make sure you pick your mark, and because the businesses that are buying you, they need to be able to absorb your numbers and make sure it doesn't affect the business. The IT business that we sold 3 years ago, they're still struggling to get their share price up. And I sold that for 80% cash and 20% shares in their company, which made me one of the 10 larger shareholders. They're a small Australian listed company. But mind you, it keeps me interested to make sure they have success in the long term. And it's been a tough market for that sort of product, but they really should be better than what they're currently showing on the stock market. I think one of the interesting things there is the CEO doesn't have that flair. And I think if you're going to be on the stock market, you need somebody to sell your story. Their figures are much better than what their price is. But that won't change until they can get somebody that can tell that story and share the future with everybody. Yeah,
so what Robbie's just said there, like I mentioned, one of Robbie's great skill sets is getting a group of people together and building a culture where people want to succeed to a certain vision. Well, Robbie's second greatest asset is he can sell. Now, look, he's not employed as a salesperson in any of these businesses. He's the managing director or CEO. But let me tell you, when you finish a conversation with Robbie in his business, you have no doubt about the passion he has for the product or service that he's selling. And if you've got kids and they ask you a question, viewers, what skills should I learn in the future to be successful in business? I'd probably answer saying learn how to sell. Robbie, what do you reckon?
Well, Andrew, maybe if I just throw this one out, what turned out to be a very good friend, he used to run Commonwealth Bank's financial planning. And we did a bit of consulting for Qantas for a little while there in the Gulf area. And they were talking to this new company called Concourse about getting some sponsorship. And the CEO of Concourse turned around to Qantas and said, well, I only want to deal with Robbie Bennetts. And they said, Robbie just consults a bit to us. And he said, yep, he's the only one I'll deal with. So I've got Qantas on the phone saying, can you come down to Sydney and meet the CEO of this Concourse? I said, well, why have I got to meet him? And they said, well, we're trying to get some sponsorship and he will only deal with you. I said, I don't know him. And they said, well, you're about to know him, aren't you? So anyway, off to Sydney we go, and this guy introduced himself, says, Robbie, I used to run Commonwealth Bank's financial planning for 10 years. And he said, I know a lot about running an internal business inside a bank. He said, you know what it's like in the real world and how to run a business out there. He said, I've got something that I think is very, very good. He said, I'll offer you some shares in it. You can have them or whatever you want to do just to get your business skills. And I said, well, what have we got? And he said, well, I've got this technology that puts a computer, a battery and a motor in a small golf buggy wheel and it becomes an electric golf buggy. I said, well, let me have a look at it. So I took it home, had a good look at it. I actually got Greg Wimp to have a look at it with me. Yeah. And we went back and said, David, you're going to go broke. He said, I've already put $8 million in. I said, well, you're going to lose it. He said, why? I said, you need to go into other areas. He said, well, what have I got to do? I said, well, look, let's go across to disability. This is wonderful technology. Let's talk about wheelchairs or something. So cutting a long story short, we got involved. I ended up buying in as a shareholder, and over a period of the next 4 or 5 years, we became the world's leader in wheelchair technology. We took that same technology, we put it into wheelchairs, and sold this time last year to the German company Sunrise, who are the biggest disability operators in the world. And we sold the technology for the wheelchairs. We didn't sell the overall technology. We can still use it in other areas, but we've sold it for the wheelchairs. And again, that was somebody identifying that you need some business skills. You needed so someone's got to have those skills to sell
absolutely.
whether it's buying or selling property. Someone's got to. People make emotional decisions, remember.
Yeah.
They don't make it because of logic. David had all the logic in the world about these wheels, but you needed to put a bit of emotion in there, and of course the wheelchairs did that. And what a fantastic thing it is for the disability world. Currently can't keep up to the demand for them globally.
Yeah,
just
right.
incredible what's going on there.
Yeah, look, we could probably do a whole podcast on a lot of these businesses, but there's so much to talk about. But let's go back to the financial planning thing. This is where the big money sort of came for you, and the most impact, I guess. You decided to go global. Singapore, New Zealand, Malaysia. Tell us about your experience there. The board's decision, not just shareholders. I imagine that's a board decision to go global. Tell us about why you expanded globally and some of the challenges that you faced trying to implement the PIS culture in some other country.
Well, the initial approach was from some people in Singapore, and they'd been doing their research on what was the best financial services model. And they'd picked us as the best financial services model globally. We went up there, we met these people, we agreed to fund it and start a small business. But it's very difficult when you go to these countries if you don't have economies of scale, because you've got compliance issues that are going to just cost you too much money. So after a very short period of time, we were actually offered the agency force of what was the Insurance Corporation of Singapore. It had been taken over and owned by Aviva, but they offered it to us at a reasonably good rate, and that was going to bring on board another 200-300 people that were all producers. So we went ahead with that, and that gave us a very strong business in Singapore straight away. Through that business, and they knew other people in Malaysia, they introduced us to another company. The company wasn't making any money. So we sat down, and again, this is where your culture's got to come in, because if you can't get the people around you to believe in what you're doing and want to be part of it, it's not going to happen. Yep. So the Singaporeans had already said, this is fantastic, we love the culture. Mind you, the first day I was there, I said, I want to talk to that guy over there, the training manager. And they said, oh, you can't do that. I said, why is that? They said, because we have tiers here. You need to talk to that manager, who will then talk to that manager. I said, well, I'm sorry, the way we work, we're all in it together. And I'll go and talk to that person, which I did. But of course, I had to say to the Australians, we've got to make sure they understand that our culture is that we're all in business together to help. So their first conference down in Perth, I said to everybody, when that bus turns up, the hotel, the Hyatt in Perth, you had to come up the stairs. I said, you make sure you're there to help them carry their bags up the stairs, the Singapore delegates. So we don't want to be seen above them. We're there to help them. Well, let me tell you, it was a funny story, because as the bins opened on the bus, this little Singaporean young lady, she goes to grab a bag, and I reached in and said, I'll get that for you. Well, I've grabbed it, and she knew who I was, and she's panicking. No, I'll carry it. No, let me help you. So I've got hold of the bag and virtually had to carry her and the bag up the stairs with her saying no. But I can tell you, 10 years after that, people were still telling the story of, this company's very different culture. This guy, that CEO, he carried the suitcases up at the conference. And so if you can get your thinking and the way you want to run a business, and particularly I come back to that word culture, if you can successfully transfer that, everybody's working for you.
Well, let me tell you, Robbie, I was part of that team, like that network you built, and I've never experienced such a great culture, and I miss it very badly. I miss the mateships there, the functions, and I've just written down a list of some of the conferences that you put on, you and the board of directors and the young ladies who did all the hard work with organising function rooms and all the hospitality and everything. It's unbelievable effort you put into these conferences. But I think from my diary, I went to Las Vegas conferences listening to you speak 5 or 6 times, Honolulu, Hawaii 5 or 6 times, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Hong Kong, not a conference, but a tour, Mexico, Fiji, New Zealand, Japan for a work-related issue. And after I left, you were doing regular conferences in China. And these things were lifetime memories built, and that all fed into the culture where you'd go over there, you'd meet other like-minded professional financial advisors, accountants, have a few drinks, go to fantastic shows in Las Vegas, and just have the best time of your life. And it was all work-related. And I tell you what, I miss that culture that you created there very, very much, Robbie, and it's very hard to duplicate a culture like that.
Yeah, many people do, Andrew. We still get a lot of feedback, and we obviously still stay friends with so many people that say they miss it. And in many ways, as we've gone through different businesses, we sort of partially carry that forward, and even to the extent of the new business now, I've had two 80-year-olds decide to come back and want to do some work with us. And, both said, you don't even have to pay us. We just miss being around. Yeah,
that's an awesome story. So, listen, all those... this is getting off the business topic now, but you were, apart from pilots and airline hostesses, I think you, more than any other person on this planet that I know, were on a plane all the time. Tell us about I call it a junket, the tax-free Qantas frequent flyer points that you put together. There must have been unbelievable amount of frequent flyer points, Robbie. And this, was it a Qantas Chairman's Club or something?
Yeah, Qantas
Tell us
Chairman's
about that,
Lounge,
just briefly.
Well, the Chairman's Lounge is normally set aside for the leaders of business, the politicians and the judges, etc. That's basically what it comes down to, or somebody they see that is very influential out there for them. So it's a great program, and you're fortunate enough. I was sitting in there one day, and I'm just head down reading the newspaper, and I thought somebody standing there looked at me. I looked up, and it was Peter Costello. And I'd never met him, and he said, I've never met you. He said, who are you? And I said, I'm Robbie Bennetts. Well, what do you do? And that's how I met Peter Costello. And after that, we used to talk once a quarter about what was happening in the economy. So it was pretty amazing that there's your treasurer just stopped in the lounge and said, well, who are you? I don't know you.
Yeah.
And that's the way I got to meet him. So
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And I remember some time ago just picking up a Gold Coast Weekend Bulletin, Robbie, and you were listed as one in a short list of the most influential business people on the Gold Coast. And from memory, it's a long time ago now, but you've got the mayor of the Gold Coast there. You've got the billionaire Clive Palmer, is it the Frizzell family who are now big shareholders of the Titans, and they own a lot of car businesses. And how is that influence that you've got there and those big hitters that you can dial up on the phone? Hey, it's Robbie. Has that helped you in business?
Mate, I guess it's about knowing people. I don't think I've ever gone and asked for any direct help, but it has always been very good that if you want a speaker at a seminar or at a conference, I've always had access to all these people. And when I was listed in the top 10 people in the country over 3 different years, that they listed me in the top 10 influential people in the country in financial services, it meant that you kept on having people like your Peter Costello and that wanting to stay in touch because he was in that same list. And so it gave you access to people that you may not have had access to before.
Well, I think you're underselling this. Like you had lunch with James Packer, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I remember
dinner.
And I remember after you had that dinner, and I said, Robbie, what did you learn from James Packer? And you said, righty, you've got to have a ticket in the lottery. And this wasn't about gambling. It was about having some sort of business where you can add value and at least give yourself a chance of making something really substantial. I've never forgotten that, Robbie, and I tell myself that little bit of philosophy every 6 or 12 months ago when I'm
here's what actually happened. That particular dinner, we both owned a property at Parramatta that had gone down at the time. It was when the pressure was on a little bit on property. And he said to me hey, Robbie, he said, I want you here because you always have a ticket in the lottery. He said, you've got to have a ticket in the lottery to win. Yeah. Those that don't win, let the lawyers and accountants sort that over there. He said, get on with the next ticket in the lottery because you're going to have that ticket to win. And I thought, very good advice.
Okay, so look, we were in a conference, I'm pretty sure, sort of 2007-ish. I remember it was Sheraton Waikiki, and I'm just having a general chit-chat here as we're looking at these little turtles at sunset raising their heads above the water. Absolutely beautiful location. And you were mentioning that because of the culture and the systems and the team that you'd put together, that you were of the opinion that the business had a built-in 30% per annum growth rate. And little did we both know at that time that the next year the GFC would come along, and we ended up, you and the shareholders of the company ended up exiting that business to a publicly listed company. And from memory, the numbers were about $100 million valuation on the whole PIS group. But I'd imagine a couple of years earlier, might have been worth a lot more than that one. I mean, look, I was looking at the stock market. The ASX 200 in 2007 was 6,800, and then a year later it was 3,400. It had dropped 50%. The recurring revenue of all the financial planning businesses were based on a multiple of the value, if you like, and all of those recurring incomes halved. The value of the financial planning businesses halved, and the group decided shortly after to sell out for $100 million. What do you think the value of that business was before shit hit the fan, Robbie?
Andrew, we had banks offering us $160 to $180 million for it. The problem with that was they all wanted a minimum amount of around about 70% of the investments made into their products. And we just said we couldn't do that. Aviva was the only one that said, you are already 30% of our Australian business. We're just happy if you just keep going and do whatever you like. The problem was Aviva ran into financial troubles during the global financial crisis. And it was an interesting story because there was no real pressure on us to sell, but we had a listed company come along and say, look, we've got $19 million in a cash box, and we think it'd be really good to come and get involved with you. You guys could become a listed company, and we could use that $19 million for expansion. We said, well, you know, it's been pretty tough times, this GFC. Might be tough for the next couple of years. It'd be good that if we use that money to go and buy some more businesses and roll them up into our existing advisors. So we don't have to worry about managing it. They'll manage it for us, but we could use the money that way. And that was basically what made that deal happen. I think it was about 120, the actual value of the business at the time. And we thought, well, this will just get us through this couple of tough years with the GFC. Things will boom on. And, you know, it's something I regret greatly because everyone said, well, this is a good thing. But, of course, as soon as they got control, they changed their thing. It's like looking up in this morning's paper. If you look at this morning's Sydney Telegraph, it's just, I lie, 5 times down the front of the paper about what's happening with the budget that's about to come out. So you've got to look at what these guys did. But my regret is that business today, because of the market from 2012 to today, that business, in my opinion, would be $1 billion today. It was a real pity that we did it. So that was a bad decision. Very good for us over all the years, and people got more than 1,000% distribution over the shareholders, the shareholders did. And of course, for every year except that year, our growth was between 25 and 33% growth, compound growth for all those years. People used to say it was not possible as you got bigger, yet we managed to maintain it. The only year that we had tough growth was the year of the global financial crisis. And realistically, those things only ever last a couple of years. It's like you're in property, you see it go up and you see it go down. No one guarantees everything goes up forever, but as long as you're a long-term player, you're fine.
Robbie, when I left high school, I was in a lot of sports, and I went to university where nobody knew me, and I just felt really lost. Did you feel lost when you had a falling out with the new board? I'm not sure if you had a falling out, but you left as a director. Did you feel lost?
Andrew, we had somebody else come along to want to buy the whole company. It was a bank, and it was going to give everybody good money. And I went to them and said, we should take this deal. And they said, well, we think it's probably time that you're not here anymore. And I said, this is a good deal for all the shareholders. And they said, yeah, well, thank you very much and see you later. So that's what actually happened. They didn't take that deal within, 6 months, their share price had dropped another 40, 50 cents.
Look, this is getting philosophical now, but did you, like I say, I'll ask the question again, did you feel like you'd lost, like you had thousands of people across Australia you're talking to at conferences with 500 accountants and planners geeing them up on what we're going to do going forward and drinking with them all, your mates with them all, and then they still knew you, but did you feel a bit lost when you lost all of that, the travelling, the conferences, or did you just need a rest? Were you exhausted?
Well, that's probably a little bit of it, that I'd probably had enough at that particular moment. But probably 12 months later, I'm thinking, why? And of course, it only took us 4 weeks or 5 weeks and we got involved with something new. And as you know, many of the staff from the old business didn't like the new management, and so they all came and joined us, and that's how we started on Platinum, the IT business. And I think we had 17 ex-PIS staff there within 6 months.
Right.
And
so how did that business start up, Robbie? Why financial services to computer technology? How does that happen?
There was a guy that used to supply our photocopiers at PIS. He came to see me and said, well, look, I've got this wonderful system that will help market everybody. So Greg Wimp and I thought, well, maybe, what are we doing now? This is 4 weeks into call it retirement or whatever you wanted to. And we said, well, okay, we'll run with this. We can go out and show everyone this great new sales system, being an electronic one. The only problem was it didn't work as good as what he told us. And Shannon, who was the CIO at Professional Investment Services, he didn't like the new owners. So he came out to us and said, that system's not going to work. They haven't really got what they think they've got. How about I come over? And Pat Cunningham said to me at the time, get Shannon over there. I said, mate, he's a very high paid person. I can't afford that straight away. And he said, yes, you can. He said, come on, you'll make it work. So that's how Shannon came, and that's how On Platinum came to be. And after a very short period of time, the network started saying, can he come and help me with my computers? Because Shannon was so technically wonderful. And that's how we started then providing services for computers.
Right, and then you exited that one out again. You mentioned just before you got out of that business, and then another opportunity came up. Tell us about this equipment leasing in the mining industry, Robbie. What's that all about?
Well, that's not really that's a company called Vansite. And Vansite is industrial caravans. This was a gentleman called Grant Gasnier that used to work at head office at PIS. He went to the Commonwealth Bank. He had a nice acreage piece up at Jacobs Well and a house at Arundel. And he wanted to start this new business. But, of course, the bank, in their infinite wisdom, said you don't have any income, so they wouldn't give him a loan. He came to me and said about the loan. So I gave him a loan and took 20% of the business. And that business now has 200 caravans of our own that we lease out. Our biggest clients are BHP, Rio Tinto, Glencore, the main roads. You've been watching the tram track being built here down from Palm Beach, down to Burleigh. You would have seen a lot of caravans along there. If you had a look carefully, they might have had Coates Hire on, but somewhere they would have had Vansite. They were either built by us and sold to Coates, or they were leased from us. And I suppose there's probably 1,000 caravans out there that we've built. Very, very successful business. I still own 20% of it.
Right. And just very quickly, BetGold, online betting. What's
again, another guy that wanted to go from being bookmaker to being online, and wondered where he could get the finance from, and he knew some friends of mine from out at Warwick and Killarney. And they said, why don't you go and talk to Robbie? And consequently, I own 30% of BetGold, and it's an online bookmaking service. I must admit, because of my lack of knowledge, I would be happy if it was sold. Okay. But I'm there. He doesn't give me any headaches, and every month there's a check, and it's all there. But it's funny, when you're involved with a business, you like being involved, even though it's sort of smaller. But I still like to be involved, and I find it difficult to be involved in that business.
Okay.
But of course, now I've got the new one. It's got me very busy.
let's talk about the new one, Robbie. Let's go.
You talk about stories, Andrew, and you talk about activity, because remember, our culture was always to keep everybody active. And we knew from all the financials and the graphs that went with it, when we were busy running events, whether it be a conference, whether it be a luncheon or just a seminar, things stayed busy. And we'd proven that over and over again. So with the IT business, we had a luncheon at our office in Sydney. We had 28 people around a square table. And it was to talk about what's happening with all this ransom that had been going on. It was getting really bad at the time, and so people were breaking into systems. And so we had, our clients included stockbroking firms, some insurance companies, lawyers, accountants. So we had 28 of them there, but we got in a guy from an insurance company that insures you for damages in those cases. We had Shannon about the IT, and I sort of ran the session. And we went round and we asked people, what can you tell us about somebody that's been hacked? And everyone had a story to tell, whether it was their story or someone they knew, but they all had stories to tell. And so then the insurance guy would say whether they would pay out or not, and Shannon would say what they should have been doing or what they need to do going forward. At the end of that, this guy walks across to me and says, hi, I'm John. I'm not John, sorry. I'll think of his name in a minute. And he said, I knew you years ago. I used to be at Baines. And he said, I've got a guy. He said, he's got something that I think is really good, but I don't think he's a good businessman. I don't think he's got any money. Would you talk to him? I said, I talk to everybody. Where's he live? He said, on the Gold Coast. I said, send him in to see me. So this guy comes in and he talked all about this nanotechnology and what's happening with nanotechnology, particularly in the health industry area and aquaculture. And so, mind you, he talked me into getting involved, and his lawyer that he introduced was Twiggy Forrest's main litigation lawyer. The day after, I was on the front page of the paper taking on Meta over in the US, and I thought, geez, I better be real careful here if that's his lawyer. But he thought he needed to invest another $100,000 to go to market. Well, $2 million later, we got to market, but I've ultimately bought him out of it. We started by manufacturing our own water that's been infused with these ultrafine bubbles. So the easiest way to explain that, if you took a glass of Coke and took one bubble that explodes through the top, well, we could get 1 billion bubbles, not 1 million, 1 billion bubbles into that one bubble. And these do not float to the surface and explode. They just swirl around inside water. And if it's something you've been drinking, it'll go into your body, it'll go into your blood. And when you need that extra oxygen, it's there. So it'll help you with performance, help with recovery. For example, in Canada, this is used massively on all the salmon farms. You've probably heard of the problems we've had down in Tasmania, and the government's just spent $35 million. Well, they're deploying this technology to clean up the waters down there. So it's infusing ultrafine bubbles and increasing the dissolved oxygen to wherever it goes. It can take the pH level down in wastewater really quick so it can go back to the environment. We've got sprays that make your skin feel smoother and tighter. And we've got another one that we've just created now. We're about to launch it very shortly, that stops all the itching and scratching when people get a tattoo. It makes it heal incredibly quick compared to. And it's all about this nanotechnology and using oxygen, ozone, CO2, and how that's all made. The company in America that actually owns the patents that we're very heavily involved with or virtually tied up with now, they've just created a new product with NASA. Of all people, NASA had a lot to do with the development of it, and this product was taken into space for that last space trip. It's a wound care product, but it has to go through all the systems yet before it can be used here. But somewhere into the future, you'll hear about us using wound care that makes your wounds heal very, very quickly.
Look, Robbie, this is a chance now. Can you, if someone listening to this, it is a property podcast, but someone might have some interest in this, where can they find out about this business?
Just go on to O2 for Life, O2 for Life, or Oxygen, spell OXYGN.
Great.
Or look up Robbie Bennetts and you'll find it somewhere in there. You'll find it.
Did I tell you that Robbie knows how to sell, listeners? Okay, let's move on to property. This is quite interesting. So you're a businessman, but on the side you've collated a bit of a property portfolio, and Sorrento, where you live, you've bought some waterfront properties. Have you got any stories about property?
Well, let me take you back a little bit. When I was 16, there's a street down in Miami called Cheney Avenue.
Right.
And if you go down to where it turns around the corner, the 2 blocks on that, I bought them for $300 each.
What?
I bought them for $300 each when I was 16 years of age. And they needed a bit of filling, so I filled them. It cost me around about $200 a block to get them up to the level I needed. And I sold them not long after that for $3,000 each and thought, this is it. You've ultimately done well here, and this is when I was 16. So that was my first taste of property.
Wow.
And I've had many different properties over the years, but jumping forward to Sorrento, as Andrew did ask me if I'd talk about it, and I have the 2 blocks side by side at Sorrento. One of them has a tennis court on it. This is on the Isle of Sorrento, and the other is the house I live in, and I paid $300,000 for that house back in 1993, I think it was. It was originally sold for 500 and something thousand in 1987. Bought it in 1993 for 300. It was It was valued at 900 in 2000. And we're still holding that, and we get phone calls all the time from real estate agents saying, with the 2 of them together, you could get anywhere 8 to 10 million, you should let us have a look at it. I said, no, we're not interested in selling. Yeah. But I own another one in that street that we bought when things were tough, and I paid $700,000 for another waterfront home on the Isle of Sorrento, and there was another one I paid $900,000 for, and I bought the one that's number 20 in Boomerang, and I paid, what did I pay for that? I paid $700,000 for it, and put a tennis court on it, because I wanted to play tennis, and I'd never been able to get the one next door. When the one next door came up for sale, it got bulldozed, and the tennis court down at 20 got sold.
You must have been making too much money.
Should never have sold number 20. Sold it for 700 and something thousand. And you know what it's all worth now? $2.5-3 million.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? The stories of the 1980s and 1990s purchase prices and how property is compounded. And you, from a lifestyle perspective, you also bought a unit in Broadbeach. Tell us about that one, Robbie.
Yeah, Andrew, I guess, my lovely wife, Sherry, decided we've got grandchildren, and wouldn't it be nice if we had something over near the beach, even though it's 10 minutes away, but it'd be really nice if we had something near the beach. So we actually bought a unit in Oracle. It'd be about, I suppose it's 4 years ago now, maybe 21, something like around that era. And it was 1.2 million, and we thought it was the absolute top of the market. Yeah. And I said, well, I'm not used to going in and buying things at the top of the market. Yeah, poor fool me, because I thought, geez, I'm kicking myself for having to pay top dollar for it. Well, about 2 weeks ago, we got the latest offer from the real estate agent saying, we've got a buyer for your unit at $1.8 million. So much for buying at the top of the market.
You have any property regrets here, Robbie? Any regrets in transactions apart from that one you sold when you're 16?
I sold one up at Killarney that I shouldn't have sold for, people are saying to me it's worth 150, 200. I sold it for 250. It sold 6 months later for 500. Small farm. But we all make our mistakes, and I was fortunate enough that when the global financial crisis was on, I was over in Las Vegas and thought, geez, these properties are cheap at the moment. And it was because Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac were dumping properties everywhere. That's what they're all talking about. So a very good friend of mine was Joe Esposito. Joe was Elvis's best man at his wedding, and was Elvis's best friend. And Joe was saying to me, they can't be that cheap. But anyway, I bought some properties over there, 3-bedroom, single-story ranch style for $110,000. I bought two-story houses, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, extra toilet downstairs, double lock-up garage, $124,900 each. And I took the money out when our currency was, I took it out at $1.05. I was kicking myself. It did jump to $1.10 for a couple of days, but very quickly went back to 90. So I took the money out at $1.05. I did take enough to buy 5 of them. My wife got a little bit nervous because we'd never bought properties in the US before. But anyway, we went ahead and we bought the 3 of these, and I still own those properties. Mind you, fantastic experience, because based on what I paid for them way back then, I get 23% per annum return after paying the managing agents.
Yeah.
And that's in US dollars.
Yeah.
So it's pretty handsome sort of result. So.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But mate, any property, every property that you've had over all the years, like it's like in the share market, unless if they stick to blue ribbon shares and that, if you're there for the long term, markets are going to go up and down. Your property will always go up and down. Just got to be sensible about it, not do silly things like Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac over there. As soon as they realised what they were doing and stopped dumping all the property, those properties jumped back to a couple of $100,000 just straight away. All properties, because they stopped selling them, they were dumping them.
Yeah, so you had currency on your side. You're getting like $1 to $1 basically. And I remember that year because once again we had a conference in Las Vegas around that time, and I remember it going very, very quickly from 1 to 1 to down to 55, 60 cents. And at one of these conferences, I'm guilty of hitting a roulette table at that time. I actually won $5,000 Australian. And I kept thinking, this is 10 grand Aussie. And I remember my wife pulling me up saying, "Oh, we've got tickets for this show. We got to go." So I left that one and picked up $5,000 US. So it's amazing what the currency can do. And I think right at this point in time, it's quite interesting all around the world actually with real estate. In New Zealand, you got property prices down 30% in some areas. In Canada, in Thailand now there's 1.5 million empty condos. In Japan, there's 9 million empty houses. So this story that you're going through, I reckon there's opportunities now with this high Australian dollar for people to explore those types of things. New Zealand, no stamp duty, no capital gains taxes.
Speaking of tax, mate, might I just share this with you?
Yeah.
I was over in America the other week. I'm spending a fair bit of time there at the moment because we're setting up to manufacture the oxygen bottles, particularly the spray bottles. We'll be manufacturing them in Phoenix. The machine's on its way from China right now. But they all complain if they have to pay 10 cents in the dollar tax. You want to hear the ones over in Florida complain, I paid 9 cents tax. And I think, you want to see what we pay here in Australia. We really need to do something about our tax. And when you go to set up a business over there, it's all get rid of the red tape. Trump's done all this. Let's get on with it. It's all about encouraging everyone to have business. I heard the ABC the other day, someone in Brisbane was trying to set up a new coffee shop, 73 requirements they had to go through.
Yeah, wow.
To set up a coffee shop.
Yeah, I agree. And you see there's so many podcasts now, people talking about moving to Dubai or moving to other countries where the tax treatment and all the red tape is a lot more beneficial for people in business. Robbie, it's an incredible story. As I said, we could probably do 5 podcasts. We've condensed it into one. So just to finish off with a few closing questions, what's the best golf course you ever played, Robbie?
Mate, this is asking people to dislike you. Augusta. And I played it 3 weeks before the Masters. So the grandstands are up, the scoreboards are up.
Okay. This is a negative question here. I want you to give a sledge. The least inspiring leader you've ever met?
I had to be Al Gore. He was vice president of the US at the time. Had dinner with him. 4 very, very uninspiring hours.
Okay. Enough said. The most inspiring leader that you look up to?
Well, this might be controversial with everything that's going on at the moment, but we had 4 days with Donald Trump, and man, you can't keep up to him. He just doesn't stop. He's just so full of life, but everything's positive. He's just a business guy.
Yeah.
Everything's a deal. Yeah. When you're talking to Trump, what do you think of that? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? What about this? And, that's what he always goes in hard. Andrew, if you go in to buy something, do you go in with some weak wishy-wash, give it away? They want 100,000, but you go and offer them 110,000 because you're such a nice guy? Or do you go in and start saying, I don't like that property, I'll give you 80? And that's what Trump is. He's in there doing deals. And he was inspiring the day 4 days that we spent time with him.
Yeah, right. Robbie, you've been, in all honesty, on the short list of 3 or 4 people in my life that I've really looked up to in business. So thank you for inspiring me and the culture that you've put into that business that I was a part of. Thank you for sharing your story, and I'm sure the viewers will be absolutely thrilled to see how you go with this new water business. Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew, and mate, all the best for you guys. You've been super successful in real estate, so mate, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Andrew Wright Property Podcast. This is all about building a community of like-minded investors who can share real life stories, experiences, and collaborate with a view to helping each other. Join us. Get in touch through the link in the show notes. I look forward to you joining me on the next episode.